Chicago's December wind sliced through the cracks of the old red brick buildings in South Shore like a scalpel, sharp, bitter, and unforgiving. Snow caked the corners of the sidewalks, gray from passing tires and forgotten dreams. Elijah Sullivan zipped up his worn jacket and ducked into the back seat of his father's battered 2002 Honda Accord. James Sullivan, 55, gripped the steering wheel with cracked hands. His janitor uniform still smelled faintly of bleach, rubber gloves, and the invisible weight of a job no one respected. Every weekday, long before sunrise, he drove Elijah across the city to Northcrest Academy, a prestigious private school where tuition cost more than their yearly rent. "Eat your apple?" James said, sliding a half-browned fruit across the seat. Elijah caught it, nodding without a smile. "Thanks." He'd stopped being embarrassed by his father's job years ago. Now all he felt was pressure, a silent, choking pressure that came from being the janitor's son, in a place where other kids wore Rolexes to class and flew private to Aspen for winter break. At 7:45 a.m., the white stone arches of Northcrest Academy loomed overhead, pristine and proud. The parking lot buzzed with laughter and engine revs as students exited Teslas and BMWs. Elijah walked past them with his head down, earbuds in, music off, just to block out the stares. In the AP Calculus classroom, the teacher, Mr. Becker, a narrow-eyed former MIT professor, scribbled equations on the board like a man possessed. The room smelled like pine cleaner and arrogance. Elijah took his usual seat in the back corner. "Nice jacket, Goodwill," someone sneered. Landing Greaves, son of the man who owned 3 downtown skyscrapers. Blonde, athletic, heir to more than Elijah would make in 5 lifetimes. Elijah said nothing. He never did. Words were like currency here, and he had none to spend. But what Elijah did have, what no one saw, was a mind like wildfire. Numbers made sense. System spoke to him. The world of logic was the only place where class, race, and status didn't control the outcome. His notebook was filled not with doodles or half-assed formulas, but independent research, advanced encryption, algorithmic theories, and neural mapping that most students here wouldn't understand if he explained it in slow motion. Still, he played the role they cast him in: quiet, invisible, irrelevant. Until that afternoon. It started with a glitch. In the Innovation Lab, a dozen seniors gathered to prepare for the National STEM Championship. Their robot, codenamed Argus, refused to execute a basic motion command. They'd spent weeks programming it, but now it twitched, froze, and collapsed like a wounded animal. Professor Harding paced nervously. "We present in 5 days. If Argus fails, we don't make finals." Landon, of course, led the team. "I told you we shouldn't have pushed the multi-threading on the main arm sequence. The codebase is unstable." "Then fix it," Harding snapped. Landon tried, then another, then another. The screen kept flashing. Error, memory stack conflict, thread exception in line 482. Elijah had wandered in to clean the trash bins as part of his work-study assignment, an arrangement the school offered to underprivileged scholars. He was halfway through the room when he stopped in front of the screen. Line 482. He squinted. "Your loop condition is missing a mutex," he said, almost too softly to hear. The room froze. Landon turned. "What?" Elijah cleared his throat. "You're calling multiple threads on the actuator without locking the shared resource. That's why the stack overflows. It's a race condition." Silence. Then laughter. Hard, sharp, condescending. "You're the janitor's kid, not a damn engineer." Mr. Becker narrowed his eyes. "Do you know how to fix it?" Elijah didn't answer. He walked to the terminal, hovered for a second, then typed furiously. His fingers moved like they were dancing. He rewrote 40 lines, inserted 3 locks, and adjusted the sequence with 2 nested conditions. He stepped back. "Run it," he said. Someone hit the key. The robot came alive. Arm extended, turned, picked up the cube, placed it perfectly on the stack. Smooth, precise, flawless. No one spoke. Elijah picked up the trash bag, slung it over his shoulder.
The next morning, Elijah arrived at school to find the halls oddly quiet. Not silent, just quieter, in that charged, cautious way that meant people were talking about him somewhere else. He noticed it first when he stepped into the cafeteria. Heads turned. Whispers cut through the usual noise like scalpels through silk. Even the cafeteria lady, who usually didn't look twice at him, offered a stiff nod as he passed. Something had changed. Elijah slid into a corner seat with his half-eaten egg sandwich. He hated attention. It felt like being placed under a microscope, every flaw exposed, every scar magnified. Then Landon walked in. With him were two other STEM team seniors and, surprisingly, Professor Harding. They moved through the cafeteria like a pack on a mission, and when they stopped in front of Elijah, every eye in the room followed. "Elijah Sullivan, can we talk?" Elijah froze mid-bite. His fingers tightened around the sandwich. Landon looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. Harding smiled. "You're not in trouble. In fact, quite the opposite." Minutes later, they were seated in Harding's cramped office, cluttered with robotics manuals, broken 3D printed parts, and a framed photo of a NASA launch from the 80s. Harding leaned forward. "Look, I'll get straight to the point. What you did yesterday, no one else could do that, not in this school, maybe not even in most undergrad programs." Elijah said nothing. He stared at a poster behind Harding's head. "Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% caffeination." Landon shifted uncomfortably. "We think he should join the team for the national competition." Elijah blinked. "You want me on your robotics team?" "You fixed what none of us could," Harding said. "And we need to win. Northcrest hasn't placed first in over a decade. I've got Stanford scouts watching this year." "But I'm not even in your class," Elijah replied. "We'll get that sorted," Harding said. "You'll get full access to the lab, after school, weekends, whenever." Elijah's stomach twisted. This was the kind of offer he dreamed of, but not like this, not handed to him like some charity token. He looked at Landon, whose jaw was tight with resentment. "They don't want me," Elijah said quietly. "They just want to win." Landon scoffed. "Don't flatter yourself." "Enough," Harding snapped. "This is bigger than egos." Elijah stood. "I'll think about it." That night, Elijah sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, but not studying. Across from him, his father worked on his crossword puzzle, still wearing his faded janitor uniform. The scent of ammonia clung to him like smoke. James sipped coffee, looked up. "Something happen at school?" Elijah hesitated. "They want me to join the robotics team. For nationals." James raised his brows. "That's huge." "I think they only asked because they need me." His father nodded. "So? What?" Elijah looked up. James leaned forward, voice low. "You think I scrub toilets at that place because they treat me like I matter? I do it because you matter. If they want something from you, son, that's leverage. That means you've got value. Use it." Elijah didn't sleep much that night, but by morning he had made up his mind. The next day, Elijah walked into the innovation lab, dropped his backpack on the table, and spoke clearly. "If I'm on this team, I want full system access, creative control over the logic architecture, and my name listed first if we win, not last, not omitted." Landon laughed bitterly. "Are you serious?" Elijah didn't flinch. "Dead serious." Professor Harding looked from one boy to the other. "Done," he said. And just like that, Elijah Sullivan, the janitor's son, became an official member of the Northcrest robotics team. For the next 6 weeks, he lived in that lab. He rewrote major sections of Argus's code, optimizing real-time feedback systems, multi-threaded pathfinding, and even reducing execution latency by 33%. Saturday morning, the air inside Northcrest's Innovation Lab was tense, even though everything looked normal on the surface. Argus the robot stood idle in the center of the room, gleaming under white LED strips. Final presentations were just 4 days away. Elijah sat alone at his usual workstation. Landon and the rest of the team were gathered near the main control board, discussing something in hushed tones. They had started doing that more frequently, whispering when Elijah was near, sharing glances, suddenly going silent when he walked past. He pretended not to notice, because Elijah had his own secret. Tucked deep inside the robot's primary function was a block of code no one else knew existed. He had slipped it in quietly over several days, hidden under innocuous variables and buried inside an automated logging loop. To anyone else, it looked like a failsafe. To Elijah, it was a message. If they tried to cut him out, if they erased his name, if they dared treat him like a disposable utility, Argus would fail. Not catastrophically, not in a way that would make it obvious, but subtly. A misalignment in the sorting routine, a 0.4-second delay in arm extension, a targeting error margin wide enough to drop them just barely out of first place. It was surgical, controlled, quiet revenge. And it was active. By Monday, the school was buzzing. The National STEM Championship was the talk of every hallway. Teachers, parents, even board members came by to watch rehearsals. Local media scheduled interviews. Stanford, MIT, and Caltech had all confirmed attendance via live stream. Harding acted like a proud father. Landon smirked like he'd already won. And Elijah? He stayed in the background, quiet, focused, and unreadable. That afternoon, Harding called a meeting. "I just got off a call with the school director. They're inviting a representative from the mayor's office. If we win, we're getting a full scholarship pipeline for future students. This is bigger than robotics. This is legacy." Then he looked at Elijah. "And you, Elijah, you'll be recognized first. You deserve that." Elijah narrowed his eyes. "You mean publicly recognized, right?" "Of course," Harding said, too quickly. Landon looked away. Later that evening, Elijah received an email. No subject line, no signature. Just one attachment, a PDF of the team's official submission form. And his name was nowhere on it. Elijah stared at the screen in silence. The betrayal wasn't just administrative, it was intentional. A clear, calculated move to erase him from the victory. He had built 70% of the current code base, and now it was like he didn't exist. His heart raced, but his mind was calm. He opened his private terminal and typed 3 words into the secure command line. Activate failsafe. Then he logged out. Competition day. The McCormick Place Convention Center was packed with over 3,000 spectators, judges, and students from every top school in the region. Giant screens hung from the ceiling, displaying team logos and live feeds of the robotic challenges. Northcrest's team was scheduled last, by design, for dramatic impact. Harding strutted around like a showman. Landon wore a crisp suit jacket over his polo, shaking hands like a young CEO. Everyone smiled. Everyone was ready. Elijah stood alone at the far end of the booth, wearing the same hoodie he'd worn every day. No badge, no team polo, no acknowledgement. He was invisible again. Just how they wanted it. Then, the announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Next up, Northcrest Academy and their autonomous robot, Argus. Please welcome the team to the challenge floor. Cheers erupted as the team pushed Argus onto the next day at Northcrest, Elijah felt the cold shift in the air before he even stepped through the front doors. It wasn't the weather. It was the stares, the too long glances, the sudden silences, the feeling that everyone now really saw him and didn't know what to do with what they saw. He wasn't just the janitor's kid anymore. He was a threat. Landon was waiting at Elijah's locker, arms crossed. "You smug little piece of—" "Careful," Elijah said flatly, opening the dented locker door. "Don't say anything you'll regret. Again." "You sabotaged the robot." Elijah looked him dead in the eye. "Prove it." Landon's face twitched. "You think you're some genius now? One trick and you're Einstein?" Elijah pulled out a notebook and shut the locker. "I don't need to think I'm a genius. You already confirmed it when you begged me to fix your trash code." Landon moved forward like he might shove him, but Elijah didn't flinch. Then a voice cut through the hallway. "That's enough. Professor Harding." The look in his eyes wasn't anger. It was fear and something else. Disbelief. "Elijah," he said stiffly, "we need to talk. Now." In the headmaster's office, Elijah sat across from Harding and Dr. Maris, the school principal. They looked like they were bracing for a courtroom drama. "We've reviewed the logs," Harding began. "Your code structure changed in the final week. That's how development works. You improve things, optimize." Maris interjected. "You didn't tell anyone you added a proprietary logic controller to the actuator thread." "Did anyone ask?" "Elijah," Harding said, voice tightening, "you manipulated our competition outcome." "I stabilized the system. The outcome reflects the code's integrity." Maris leaned forward. "We're considering disciplinary action. Academic integrity is at stake." Elijah stared at them both. "Used me, then erased my name, and now you want to talk about integrity?" Maris straightened. "You're here on a full scholarship. That scholarship can be revoked." "Go ahead," Elijah said quietly. "I got offers now." "From where?" Harding asked. Elijah didn't answer. But inside his backpack was a printed email from Vision Code, an invitation to San Francisco, a 6-month paid mentorship program, and the chance to work on real AI infrastructure, not school trophies. That night, Elijah sat at the kitchen table while his father stirred chili on the stove. "I heard about what happened," James said, without turning around. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," his father said, "but they'll still try to make you feel like you did." Elijah looked down at his chipped bowl of soup. "They're scared of me." "They should be," James said, finally sitting. "You see things they can't. That kind of vision, it doesn't come from textbooks. It comes from cleaning other people's messes for long enough that you learn how systems really work." They ate in silence for a while. Then Elijah said, "They said I don't belong." James smiled faintly. "They said the same to me, every day, for 20 years. Elijah nodded. "I'm leaving. I'm going to San Francisco." James paused. "You sure?" "Yeah. They don't get to define my ceiling anymore." James leaned back in his chair. "Then pack your things, son. Your future's calling." 3 weeks later, Elijah stepped into the elevator at the sleek glass tower that housed Vision Code.
The doors opened to a modern office space buzzing with quiet energy, engineers in hoodies, code walls projected on glass, and a view of the Golden Gate that made him feel like he'd landed on Mars. Dr. Ayanna Liddell greeted him personally. She was sharp-eyed, afro pulled back tight, wearing no makeup, no frills, just 6 months passed. By now, Elijah Sullivan had become more than just a mentee at Vision Code. He was a known quantity. His name started to appear in internal devlogs, cited in codebase updates, whispered about in executive meetings. People 3 floors up were asking, "Who's the kid who cracked the neural misalignment in less than 2 hours?" Dr. Ayanna Liddell watched him closely. "Elijah," she said one afternoon, "what's your endgame?" He looked up from the tablet in his lap, code streaming across it like DNA. "Endgame? You've proven you're smarter than most of our engineers, you're reliable, you don't panic under pressure, but you're still holding something back." Elijah shrugged. "I'm used to playing defense." "You don't need to anymore," Ayanna said. "You're not the janitor's son here, you're just brilliant." That word still caught him off guard. Not because he didn't believe it, but because he spent so many years pretending not to. He gave her a half smile. "I want to build something that can't be ignored, something permanent, something with my name on it, right on the core." Ayanna nodded. "Then maybe it's time we talk about your project." Vision Code had a tradition. Every mentee could propose a flagship project, something innovative, something ambitious that, if approved, would be funded and developed in-house. Most proposals were modest, minor AI tools, efficiency models. Elijah wasn't interested in modest. He submitted a 38-page outline called PRISM, Predictive Resource Intelligence for Societal Mobility, a modular, ethics-driven decision engine that could be embedded into public service AI systems. Police dispatch, hospital prioritization, educational aid distribution. The idea was radical. Bias cannot be removed from humans, but bias can be outvoted by mathematics. Ayanna read it 3 times, then took it to the board. 2 weeks later, Elijah had his own corner of the 7th floor, a 5-person development team, a personal assistant, and a wall-sized monitor that read, "Prism, lead developer Elijah Sullivan." He was 18. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, North Crest Academy had moved on, or tried to, but their robotics team had been quietly disqualified from the regional rematch when anonymous complaints were filed regarding intellectual property theft. The administration had tried to cover it up, but students whispered, "Wasn't that the janitor's kid's project?" Landon Greaves had received early acceptance to Dartmouth, but no scholarship. The rejection letter from MIT had been especially painful. It read, "Not a fit for our integrity standards." And Dr. Maris? She'd been quietly removed after an audit into the scholarship committee's ethics. The school now operated under new leadership, one determined to erase the past. But it wasn't that easy, because one Saturday morning, a large white envelope arrived at the main office, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside was a sleek portfolio, matte black, minimalist, and a single sheet on top. "To whom concern, you taught me more than textbooks ever could, so here's my gift to the next janitor's kid. Elijah Sullivan." Beneath it was a full license for Prism's educational algorithm, optimized for low-income school districts, free, permanent, untouchable. Included was a full-use grant to North Crest's next scholarship recipient, named in honor of James Sullivan. Back in San Francisco, Elijah watched the deployment logs as Prism's beta modules went live across 7 cities. He wasn't smiling, he was processing, because beneath all the triumph, all the vindication, was something more complex. Grief. For the years he'd been invisible, for the classmates who never saw him, for the father who'd spent his whole life bent over a mop to give him this shot. That evening, Elijah stood outside Vision Code HQ, watching the sun drop behind the Bay Bridge.
Ayanna joined him. "You know," she said, "there's going to be a time when people forget who you were before all this." Elijah nodded slowly. "I hope not." "Why?" "Because remembering keeps me sharp, keeps me humble." Ayanna smiled. "Legacy isn't about what you build. It's about who gets to build after you." He looked over. "You built Vision Code from scratch." A year later, Elijah stood on a stage at the National Equity and Innovation Summit in Washington, D.C., wearing a crisp navy suit and no tie. The banner above him read, "Building Beyond Bias, Reimagining Access in STEM." The audience was packed with educators, investors, students, and policy leaders. Dozens of cameras, dozens of networks, the same kinds of rooms that had once ignored him completely. Not anymore. Behind him, on a massive screen, flashed the logo of his initiative. SCALE, Strategic Code Access and Learning for Everyone. He took a breath and began. "A janitor once told me something that changed my life. He said, if they want something from you, that means you have value. Well, I'm here because people wanted what I could do, but they didn't want me. That's how systems are designed. To harvest brilliance, but not nurture it. To reward legacy, not struggle. And I'm done letting that be the norm." The room was silent when he finished. Then, slowly, thunderous applause erupted, a standing ovation. And as the crowd rose, Elijah spotted a familiar face near the back. His father, in a second-hand suit, clapping slowly, eyes filled with tears. That evening, back in his hotel room, Elijah scrolled through emails. Vision Code was expanding PRISM to 6 more states. SCALE had received $4.5 million in new federal grants. And MIT had just offered him an honorary doctorate. He closed the laptop. Then, like clockwork, opened another tab and checked the Northcrest Academy website. There on the homepage was a smiling photo of a new student, Naomi Alvarez, 14, daughter of a building maintenance worker, recipient of the James Sullivan STEM Opportunity Grant. He stared at her eyes. So much fire. She didn't know him, but she didn't have to. That wasn't the point. Later that week, Elijah visited Chicago for a SCALE outreach tour. He didn't tell Northcrest he was coming. He just showed up, unannounced, wearing a hoodie and jeans, like old times. No cameras, no media, just curiosity. The front lobby had changed, sleeker floors, brighter lighting, but the smell was the same, pine cleaner and polish. He wandered past a row of lockers unnoticed, until he saw the plaque. It hung outside the Innovation Lab, etched and brushed steel. Dedicated to those who sweep the floor and still dare to dream. Inspired by Elijah Sullivan, class of 2023. He stood there for a long time. Then, a student walked by, confused. "Hey, do you go here?" Elijah smiled. "I used to." He found his way into the lab. The new team was prepping for another regional competition. A girl, Naomi, he assumed, was typing furiously at the command terminal. She noticed him and narrowed her eyes. "You lost?" Elijah grinned. "Want a race to debug that code?" She blinked, then smiled. "You're on." Later, as he exited the building, Naomi called after him. "Hey, what's your name?" He paused, looked back. "Elijah," he said, "but that doesn't matter." She tilted her head. "Why not?"
He turned toward the door, voice steady. "Because it's your name that's going on that trophy." That night, Elijah sat in his childhood bedroom. Nothing had changed. Cracked ceiling, peeling posters, the familiar sound of CTA buses outside. His father was asleep in the next room. He leaned back, arms behind his head, eyes on the ceiling.